Hi, I'm Yasmin Ibison, I'm 24 and I am the founder of Critics Club. So the mission behind Critics Club is really to shake up the people and the voices who have access to our cultural spaces and communities. So for me, I know that I'm really lucky that from a young age I was going to theatres, galleries, museums with my parents, but we know that for a lot of young people they don't have this opportunity, and there's a real gap between who has access to these spaces and who doesn't have access to these spaces. So Critics Club is a social enterprise that's looking to fill that gap. So we run cultural programs with young people aged 13 to 18 in secondary schools, helping them to engage with new cultural spaces as critics. So the idea is to empower new voices, to break down the invisible barriers that prevent young people from attending these spaces, and just generally widening access to such spaces to create a more equitable industry for young people. There are so many benefits for engaging with the arts, both for individuals in terms of growth and to build stronger communities. I think for the young people I work with from an individual basis, taking them to a theatre or to a gallery for the first time pushes them outside of their comfort zone and forces them to connect with their surroundings in a new way. So the arts can ignite the imagination and creativity. It kind of helps them to think and engage critically with a new piece of work. I kind of really encourage the people that I work with to constantly be asking why and to reflect on their thoughts, feelings and reactions in relation to the work and the experiences that they're having. And I think in doing that, it gets them to kind of reflect on who they are and also how the work and themselves fit into wider society as a whole, wider history as a whole, wider culture as a whole. In terms of community and building stronger communities, the arts are so important. Both in terms of representation and bringing an authentic voice to new stories. So it's so important that communities get to tell their own stories in their own voice for that community as well. So it's an empowering process for the communities to be on stage, to share their experiences, their lived experiences, and for those lived experiences to be watched and absorbed by audience members who will share and resonate emotionally with that. So I think there's a really important piece there around representation of community art and community practice on stage, and how that can be empowering to bring communities together, bring new voices to the fore and kind of diversify perspectives in society as a whole. I think often these barriers are invisible, so that makes them harder to kind of name or track or remove. I think one of the main barriers is a real sense of cultural elitism attached to some of the more traditional spaces. When we go to these spaces, we'll often see, or when I go to these spaces, I will often see very few people that look like me engaging in the work. The work itself will often be made by white middle-class people, and that's reflected in the audiences who attend, the people who work in such spaces. So if that's not you, it's really hard for you to resonate with that space and to connect emotionally with that space. Another barrier I would say is the spaces themselves can feel quite intimidating, whether that be by design or whether that just be by you're walking into a new space for the first time, and that can be difficult to navigate at times. I think paradoxically sometimes cultural spaces can feel quite oppressive rather than expressive, which, you know, ironically is against what the industry, the creative industry should stand for. You know, for some young people when they arrive, there's a sense of having to be silent. There's a lot of unspoken rules of how you dress, how you speak, how you navigate that space. That can be oppressive for a young person who hasn't been taught those, who doesn't know how to assimilate to that, and therefore is appreciating the art in the wrong way. For me, I think that if a young person wants to go to the theatre or to a gallery and engage in a quiet way, they want to be a bit subdued, that's fine. But on the flip side, if young people want to go, be expressive, be loud, take selfies, take videos, that should be celebrated, because that's also an expression and an appreciation for the joy of the space and for the work within it. In my work, I've been really fortunate to have such great engagement from some of the young people, in particular with specific pieces of theatre or exhibitions that they've seen. And I think part of that good engagement has come from things that those cultural spaces have done specifically to really push for more diverse younger audiences to come into their space. So I can think of one specific example of taking a group of kind of year 9, year 10 students from a school in South London to the Young Vic to see a play back earlier this year. And they were met by the artistic director, Kwame Kwame. And he took them backstage, he showed them around the building, and he explained to them that he is the first black artistic director in the UK. And you could see their faces light up in seeing someone that looked like them in a position of power within the industry. And kind of the way that he spoke to them, he was so engaging. He knew how to engage young people particularly. And that came out then in their reviews. I remember there was one boy who wrote that he felt so welcome in that space, and that Kwame spoke to him in Arabic, which made him feel like he was at home. So it's small things like that, that diversifying the way that we speak to the audiences that we want and really bringing them into us, rather than opening our doors and saying, you know, you come to me. It's about us going out to the communities and bringing them into the space and welcoming them into that space. So that's really one fantastic example of kind of a space doing something to really engage younger audiences. I think another way that we can engage young people and break down those barriers is by bringing young people into decision-making positions within the cultural spaces. So building a youth board of young people who can decide, have decisions around programming, around marketing, because they will be the best people to tell you how to get more people like them into the space. So that is A, empowering for that group, and B, kind of, it's a mutual relationship. You're bringing young people in who will in turn invite others to follow in their footsteps. I really hope that we shift our perspective in the way that we do theatre and art more generally, and ground the practice in community rather than in profit making. I really want to see more diverse audiences coming into cultural spaces for the first time to access work that represents them and that resonates with them. I think in the industry, if somebody has lived experience of the work that's being showcased, then that is the voice that we should be listening to first. And I think that's where we'll have the biggest impact.